Good morning, everyone. Just saw everybody a few minutes ago. What we wanted to do, bless you. What we wanted to do here this morning was give you just a little deeper look in what it took to put on an event of this magnitude from the standpoint of security team. And I believe everyone is aware, although he's not here today, Secret Service Special Agent Matt Miller was actually in charge of the special event, the NSSE, and did an outstanding job. He actually moved down here to Tampa well over a year ago, and we couldn't have asked for anybody better to be on the team to plan and implement this. We have our friend from the FBI, Special Agent in Charge Steve Ibison, and the FBI was an integral part of this, and he's going to talk in a few minutes about some of the intelligence components of it. Obviously, half of our family, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Unfortunately, David G. couldn't be here today, but we have Colonel Ed Duncan, who has just done an amazing job. My personal hero, Assistant Chief John Bennett, and Ed and John are truly the ones that put this together. They oversaw the planning of this entire event, and just as important, or as I would look at it, more importantly, they oversaw the successful implementation of this plan. And if there are hundreds of individuals that work to make this a success, but really these two guys are the ones that, in my eyes, that really put it together. And then from the crowd management team, we have Major Ray Lawton from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and Major Brian Dugan from the Tampa Police Department, and the two of them oversaw the entire crowd management plan and did an outstanding job with that. Obviously, resulted in we started out with the 3 arrests, but I believe the official is going to be 2 because the one at Romneyville was the homeless individual against the homeless individual over a piece of cardboard. So we've pretty much taken that off of our official list. We have my partner with the City of Tampa, Fire Chief Tom Forward. His team did an outstanding job ensuring that everybody was safe and hydrated through the entire event. And some of the unsung heroes, the Solid Waste Director, Tanya Brickhouse, is here with us today. And you see the police department out there visible doing a lot of the tasks associated with the RNC. Something that you didn't see was the behind-the-scenes people, and Tanya Brickhouse is the leader of the majority of those guys, and they did an outstanding job. And we'll get into some of the items that were picked up that we believe were going to be used as weapons during the RNC, and they were unable to do so because of Tanya and her group, code enforcement, clean city, and really even the citizens throughout our area. Now, just to give you some of the numbers, some arrest comparisons, the last RNC that you guys are all aware was in Minneapolis-St. Paul. They had approximately 800, a little over 800 arrests there. The 2004 RNC that was in New York, they had 1,800 arrests. 2009 Super Bowl that we hosted here, we had 33 arrests associated with that. Last Gasparilla, we had 62 arrests, and that was sort of a low for us. And the average Bucks game, we arrest 10 to 15 individuals. So to say that this was a success by virtue of the lack of arrests is really an understatement. And that credit, as I have said all week, goes to the troopers, the deputies, and the officers that came from throughout the state to ensure that this was a safe event that reflected very, very well on the Tampa Bay area. And I couldn't be any prouder of the law enforcement throughout the state. We clearly communicated to them what our expectations were, and that was to show a great deal of restraint, patience, to be courteous, but to be firm, letting everyone know that they could express themselves whatever way they felt necessary, as long as it didn't cross over into criminal behavior. And they went above and beyond any expectations that we could ever have imagined. The entire week, I never heard one negative comment about any officer. All I heard was positive about how courteous and helpful the officers were. So again, that's a testament not only to the law enforcement in the Tampa Bay area, but in the entire state. And again, I'm very, very proud of that. Now, some individuals would say in hindsight that we may have over-prepared. And as we've said all along, everyone, including us, would have the perfect plan on Friday morning. But unfortunately, you know, that's a little late. But we do not feel that we over-prepared. Based on the intelligence that we had, and Special Agent in Charge Ibison will talk about that in a minute, based on the intelligence that we had, the information from the legitimate demonstration protesting groups that were coming here to Tampa, we certainly expected much, much larger numbers in the way of demonstrators that just didn't materialize. So that obviously was very helpful for us. But it was the intelligence, it was the event zone ordinance, it was getting those items that had been placed throughout the city to be used as weapons, getting those things cleaned up and out of the way, and then the team response of all law enforcement that made this a very successful event. So we feel that we prepared appropriately. The plan was implemented. We tried to have a very measured approach wherever we had any demonstrations. We didn't want to have an overwhelming show of force so that we could allow the demonstrators to express themselves. And as a result, it was seen as a very successful event. So now I will bring up Colonel Ed Duncan, and he's going to talk about perspective from the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Chief. And on behalf of Sheriff David G., I want to thank you for being here today. One of the things that I want to say right off the bat was absolutely agree with the Chief. This was a collaborative effort from across the state, and through that collaborative effort, we were without a doubt a success. We have had the opportunity over the past 2 years to review other events that have taken place, and we learned from some of those challenges and mistakes that those other agencies made, and we put them to work here in Tampa. One of the things that I would want to say now is the training that all of our officers went through was extremely beneficial. We asked our officers to maintain their training during this whole course of the event, and we were able to, in certain circumstances, we were able to de-energize those protest groups that wanted to cause problems based on the fact they were wanting to feed off of our aggression. We didn't give them that, and as a result, we just shut them down. They were anticipating us to be very aggressive, very heavy-handed. That may have been some of the tactics in other jurisdictions, but when we were able to give them some space to let them speak their piece, we told them from the very beginning that they would not be allowed to create public disturbances or to do criminal activity, and we made that very clear. And I think by our presence, they realized that we were serious about that. Again, I cannot tell you enough that the training that all of our officers attended was extremely beneficial. But one of the support groups that were out there is our public sector. All of the contractors that we had to deal with, the logistics behind this is just overwhelming in itself. We had a lot of great support from the public as far as the private vendors that supported this mission. You cannot bring a group of law enforcement agencies together and not have a huge logistical support system. We were fortunate to have that. And another group that came to us from the Department of Justice was the Community Services Program that the Department of Justice supports and funds. And Mr. Tom Battles is one of the lead program directors for that. They were very, very instrumental in us having a liaison with these protest groups. They would go and talk with those individuals, try to see what their objectives were, and we were able to negotiate with them to make sure that everybody got their mission accomplished and their objectives accomplished. But again, for the Tampa, Florida, we look fantastic. I'm going to tell you that. I'm very proud of that. If you look at the city of Tampa this morning, you have never known that we had a major event over here. It's back to business. We're back to normal. We recover very well, and that's over the years of experience that we've had with major events. So, you know, when a lot of people thought, well, Tampa's not really that big of a city, can they handle that? Absolutely. I had absolute confidence in the very beginning that we'd be able to be successful, and we were. Like the Chief said earlier, this thing started in May of 2010 for us. So all of the planning that we have done, in my opinion, paid off, and I want to thank each and every one of you out there for the support, and couldn't have done it without them. Thank you.
Thanks, Colonel. Next, we're going to bring up Assistant Chief John Bennett.
in a sense, trying to echo what Chief Castor and Colonel Duncan has already said. You know, I remember the selection process pretty clear several years ago, and trying to look at our city and actually the entire Tampa Bay area in comparison to some of the major cities that have held these events in the past, whether it be New York or Philadelphia. And, you know, at that point, you didn't really have an opportunity to go back and look at an event live like we had the chance of the Super Bowl. But we also know that, you know, for a long time our partnerships have really prevailed in the way that we've done things in the Tampa Bay area, whether it's a natural challenge like a hurricane or a large special event like the Super Bowl or Gasparilla. And then you recall the fact that the mayor and the chief of police and the sheriff had set the tone for the mission, much like we do with the crime reduction. And it was very simple, just have a safe and efficient event for the entire political process, whether it was inside the secure zone or in the community where the demonstrators and the general public would operate. So based on all that together, you know, focusing on that simple mission goes back, like Colonel Duncan said, 1.5 years ago, and through that microscopy of planning and exercising and training and working in the details and talking, you know, for hours and hours and hours about their training curriculums and everything that we'd have to do to bring, you know, over 50 agencies together in the state to put on this event. That's really where it was. It was in the details of that. And so between the relationships and the planning and training details, as Colonel Duncan has mentioned, and setting the mission tone from the mayor and the chief and the sheriff, and making sure that permeated into all the individuals in the public safety, not just the police, but our support from the fire department, public works, solid waste, all of the supporting partners that we see. I knew that going into the selection process, we may have been an underdog, but on the back end, it's our working relationships with all other jurisdictions and departments, and the fact that we have done so many special events that we thought we had a chance to be successful. And I think as the chief and Colonel Duncan so far have said, and others I'm sure will say, it was that collaborative effort that did so. So thank you.
All right. Now we're going to hear from FBI Special Agent Steve Ibbison.
Good morning, everybody. I want to thank all those federal agencies, including the FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, a number of DHS agencies that were behind the scenes that we didn't see out there during this time. Also, obviously, I'll echo the words of the chief and everybody else of the great work that was done together throughout the planning and the execution of this operation. I think it's a testament to the relationship, the ongoing relationship of law enforcement from local, state to federal agencies that we have here in the Tampa area. Real quickly, I was going to give you some of the feedback we're getting from our intelligence gathering operations, why the environment was the way the environment was throughout the RNC. The first one is the obvious one is the weather. There were a number of groups that we had intelligence or information indicating that they were going to come down this way, but the weather or the threat of a hurricane stopped a lot of those groups from coming. When you say that, you got to understand that a lot of the would-be agitators, if you will, the protesters, the type that want to cause problems or commit some kind of crime, like to embed themselves into the groups that are out there practicing their First Amendment rights. They like to embed themselves, for lack of a better term, hide themselves within those groups. When those groups aren't here, they're out in the open. Hard to hide. So weather being the first one. Second, obviously, we've talked about it a lot here today already, is the overall security plan. Very tight. If you walk into town, you had, if it wasn't folks on, or officers on bicycles, they were on horseback, they were in patrol cars, they were on streets, standing on the corner, doing a great job, dressed all together in a uniform way. We're getting feedback that obviously that was a deterrent for some of those folks that wanted, again, to disrupt the RNC. Also keeping those safe from those that wanted to execute their First Amendment rights. Very important that came together. And then we've talked a little bit about it as the feedback we're getting actually from these folks is that the restraint of the police departments and the sheriff's office and all those agencies out there that are on the street nose to nose with these folks on several different occasions, the restraint they showed, the professionalism that these agencies showed really stopped a lot of these folks. You got to understand a lot of these people that, again, would be agitators, that's part of their MO, is to agitate the police, agitate the crowd control to a point where the confrontation occurs. And we just didn't have that here in Tampa. The police department, the sheriff's office, and all the other agencies that were involved in this showed that restraint and that professionalism where that did not occur. It did not get to that point. So again, I want to thank all those agencies that were involved. I want to thank for all those folks from the FBI and Secret Service that work behind the scenes hours, as the Sheriff's Department mentioned, since May of 2010 behind the scenes, and it made this what it is today. Thanks.
All right. We will open it up to questions now. Yes.
You talked a lot about the restraint that was shown, and I know there was instances where, you know, the protesters tried to block streets by lying down or what have you. Were there ever instances where your officers really did come under fire, being spit at, stuff thrown at them? Did the protesters ever really get
No, they never got to that point, and one of the reasons that there wasn't anything thrown at us is, as you see the map, and I believe you all received that information of where we picked all of these items up, and some of those items that we picked up that were to be used as weapons, when we cleaned those up, we came back a second time and found that they had restocked in those particular areas. So there was a lack of things to be thrown. There were individuals that had backpacks, and we were constantly watching to see what was being pulled out of those backpacks, but they really never had that opportunity. There were plenty of instances where the individuals tried to bait the officers, jumping in their face, trying to get them to do something. And you've heard a lot about the training that's gone on over the last year and a half. But it wasn't just that training up to game day and then letting everyone go. You constantly, even last night, you heard Major Dugan, you heard Major Lawton over the radio telling everyone, remember your training, stay calm, remember your training. And that was just the constant message to the officers. Just stand back, let them do whatever they want, as long as they don't assault the officers and deputies and troopers or break the law. And the officers they just never gave them the opportunity.
Chief, we've heard a lot about your successful approach to dealing with the protesters, but you also had a large national security responsibility to keep the city of Tampa safe. Can you talk a little bit about how everyone approached that, keeping the city safe, the bridges, the dignitaries, and were there any credible threats that came up over the course of the week?
Yes, we obviously had very robust plans all the way around with the transportation, with dignitary protection. We did receive information, and that's historically accurate, that one of the areas of attack is usually the transportation. Try to keep the delegates from arriving, and I think everyone's seen the videos from Minneapolis, St. Paul, where things were thrown over the overpasses, and people hung from bridges, and we exercised all of those possibilities to ensure that we were prepared, and then monitored all of the intelligence through the FBI and through a number of other open sources to find out exactly what tactics may be used and to try to prevent those. And again, very, very successful.
Was there ever a credible threat to those systems?
Yes, we did receive information indicating that there were going to be slowdowns on the bridges, that was going to be a tactic that was to be attempted.
And what do you think deterred them?
Probably when they saw us out there. Our planning and preparation.
Chief, obviously the training was invaluable for the RNC. How will that training be used again? Can you give some examples about how down the road you guys are going to be able to use that?
Well, it can be used in any number of special events. As I've said, we host over 800 special events in the city, and so this is something that pretty much sets a stage for the handling of any type of an event that comes up. And I believe that it shows that Tampa is ready to host any large events. Not that I'm volunteering for anything of this magnitude again, that's for sure. So I don't want anybody to take that as a volunteerism. But, you know, it shows that we're ready. And as I said, the day that we received the RNC, I knew that we would be successful based on the law enforcement relationships. And that's not just local Tampa Bay. Everybody knows that the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and the Tampa Police Department are as one agency, which unfortunately is not the case nationwide. But on the state level and on the federal level, everybody works together as a team towards a common goal, and you saw that here.
Chief, besides the machete on Sunday and those items throughout the week, was there a list of other items that officers had confiscated? Because we made a big deal at the very beginning that you can't allow these certain items in the event zone. So were there any of those particular items?
No, we didn't. We did see, not confiscated, but we did see, for example, over in the Voice of Freedom Park, they were crafting big banners, and we went over and said, if you intend to carry that in the event zone, it's not going to work, and they modified the signs and the banners. And there were a couple of groups that called that wanted to carry the puppets and had us come out and examine those to make sure that they were allowed in the event zone prior to.
A lot of the social media accounts for the Occupy folks and Anonymous said constantly throughout the week, warning law enforcement outnumbers us 4 to 1. Can you get a sense of whether law enforcement outnumbered the protesters and the other groups, and is it 4 to 1?
I don't know what the ratio is, but we obviously outnumbered them.
So is this the work, do you think, of several groups or one group, what we're seeing on the map? And what happened to them? Did they leave town? Or?
I would say several groups, and yes, a lot of them left town. You know, you saw the same thing that we did in the social media. You basically, you can't get anything accomplished here in Tampa. Let's just head to Charlotte and try it again.
How did you qualify what you believe was going to be used for the RNC versus just happened to be there?
We don't have any way of saying. I think the only true indicator is that if we cleaned it up and came back and it was stashed there again, then I think everyone would agree that those items were to be used as weapons. But we can't say definitively that all of these items were to be used as weapons. But as I told Mayor Buckhorn, the city of Tampa is probably cleaner than it's ever been. And matter of fact, if you guys saw night before last, Anonymous, the Romneyville groups put on the masks and were walking around picking up trash in the park, and they basically couldn't find any.
Question for solid waste. How many tons of things were actually collected from the event zone in general, and how did it compare with what you projected? And also, when are the garbage cans and things going to be returning?
First of all, we're excited about the opportunity that we had to be such a critical part of this. What I will tell you is that right now, preliminary numbers, we looked at numbers not just for the event zone, but for this time last year. We looked at the numbers of what the tonnage was last year this time and what it was this time. And right now, I mean, as of noon yesterday, we were at above 800 tons in terms of waste collected. What I will also say is that we had to do a number of things to prepare before. So we had to go and retrieve carts. We had to lock down dumpsters. We had to change out receptacles. As we speak now, we're getting ready to disperse the 300 plus carts that we had to pull out of the downtown area. We're going to replace the carts as we speak now, delivering the carts back to the residents that were on the parade routes. So a lot of pre-work done, as you've heard from everybody else. A lot of prep went into this, a lot of planning, and then the execution. I am excited about the fact that it was flawless. You know, like the duck swimming, you might have feet pedaling feverishly, but smooth in terms of being able to be flexible and respond appropriately.
Any idea of some of the weird things that were collected over the course of the week in that area?
Nothing substantial, not weird, but out of place. And that's what makes it weird, clearly out of place. And so when you see piles in places where they don't belong, it's clear that they were there for other reasons.
What, just as you folks studied previous events, because of what happened here in Tampa, do you expect other law enforcement agencies to take a look at what happened here and what worked?
Sure. That's, I mean, that's part of any plan, is to look at what has happened historically, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And we had members from Charlotte down here to observe how we handled the RNC. And then I'm sure that everyone, whoever is awarded the next RNC and DNC, will look at that as well. And one of the things, we have a group we contracted with CNA, and they've been on the ground the entire time. They're going to do an after-action report for the RNC, and they're going to do one for the DNC as well. Surprising to all of us that nothing like that existed. So you basically had to reinvent this, these plans every 4 years. So that will be Tampa's big gift to whoever gets the next RNC or DNC, is to be able to have that playbook going into the planning process.
Who specifically was down here from Charlotte?
The chief was Rodney Monroe, and then there were three. I met three of his staff that were here last Sunday, and then Chief Monroe came down to the protest on Monday and followed. And then I'll talk to him before their event starts, and just some, you know, some things that occurred here that will be helpful for him.
Have we offered to send people out there, and have they accepted it?
Offered to send people to Charlotte? No, but we have been in contact with them. We have a good working relationship, you know, through the planning process, because the same with the DNC, there was nothing in place. You basically had to reinvent. So you had to go back to the place that hosted it 4 years ago. It's not necessarily the same staff, and ask them, how did you handle logistics? How did you handle the crowd management? And that's what we did. So now there will be a playbook. So we're not going to Charlotte, but we've been in communication leading up to both events.
When's the after action report come out?
It'll be a few months.
Do you have an estimate as to how many protesters actually showed up?
No, you know, people always ask me, and I'm not the greatest at estimating the numbers, but I would say total, I mean, everywhere in the Bay Area, maybe 2,000.
I know during the G8 summit in Chicago, they talked about some of their tactics and undercover work, and they talked about embedding themselves with some of these anarchists. Did we kind of follow the same playbook?
Yes, we had information with these groups. We had a lot of undercover officers in the downtown area, and that really is invaluable, knowing which individuals are going to commit crimes and identifying them very quickly, especially in large crowd situations, because a lot of individuals will get pulled into the moment. You have people that go in with the sole purpose of agitating others into action that they wouldn't normally, actions that they wouldn't normally take. So that is that's a integral element of any large crowd management.
Did you study all the tapes that came out of the Minneapolis?
Yes.
Tesla just learned from their mistakes?
Yes, yes. And then Chief Bennett, as he said many times, there was a whole group of individuals that went up to Chicago to see how there's really nothing that can replace the firsthand experience, to see exactly how things ran up there as well.
This is for Colonel Duncan. You've been around law enforcement a year or two, I think. How does this event,
A few, just a couple.
How does this event compare to other big events you've worked over the years, and what were some of the unique challenges that you know, the RNC brought to you and you faced?
Well, I can tell you this: if the city of Tampa can successfully handle an RNC, they can handle anything else you bring at us. This is the biggest obstacle was the logistical piece of just bringing in officers from outside the state or outside, throughout the state to help us. Like Chief Bennett said earlier, we brought in 50 different agencies. When you look back at some of the other venues that have hosted this, they would only have to reach out, like New York City. If they need 8,000 cops, they just shut down a district and they just move them over. You know, for us, and the sheriff's office is the 8th largest sheriff's office in the nation, and we've only have, you know, 1,200 deputies on staff. So between, if you were to combine all of our staff and all of TPD, we're just right at 2,000 officers. So here we are, and you still have to maintain your quality of services outside the RNC footprint. So we're now having to go out to 50 different agencies. Like St. Paul, they actually only engaged 6 other agencies. So you bring these agencies together, You've got to work about the, you've got to concern yourself with the philosophies of those agencies, blending those philosophies into what we want here in Tampa. And that was what was important. And believe it or not, that was very well received by all the other agencies. They knew that what they were coming to do here was to represent Tampa. And they all were very cooperative with us on that. The logistics, again, when you're talking about bringing in officers here from other agencies, the numbers, just think about having to feed, just the mobile field force contingency, including the mounted and the bikes and the foot soldiers. That's about 1,800 bodies. So just feeding 1,800 people 3 times a day, the logistics just for that piece of it. And that doesn't include all the other people that were engaged in the other disciplines that we had to cover. Hotel reservations, that whole logistical piece, the things that you don't really get into until you actually have an incident happen. When you have an officer here from an outside agency, what happens if he gets injured? The city was very gracious in making sure that those officers were covered, that we would have their workers' comp issues covered. Those administrative issues are just as challenging as the operation itself.
All right, before we end this, Colonel Ed Duncan is getting ready to retire, and he said at the very beginning of this, he said, listen guys, it goes south, y'all just blame it all on me. So I just want to say to Colonel Ed Duncan and to Assistant Chief John Bennett, here's to a job well done and happy retirement. This is your gift, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.